in the town, this is the town, we're not in the town council meeting, we are in the municipal center on Monday, June 23rd at 7:02 PM. We are going to start by opening the public hearings on two ordinances that we have proposed from the ordinance committee to the town council. Those were contained in the agenda, and links to the agenda are on the town manager's social media page, as well as the town website, and links to the ordinances which are contained on the town website were also contained in the agenda. So we are going to open up with the first one, police traffic ordinance. We are now in the public hearing for police traffic ordinance. Is there anybody here who would like to speak either in favor or against on the police traffic ordinance? For those who might not know, this is basically an ordinance to consummate what the policies and procedures are when somebody needs to do traffic duty in town, construction, road work, and what the policies and procedures are for accessing town resources are, how much those cost, etc. So if adopted, the ordinance will be in effect in a couple weeks? 21 days following whenever it is finally approved. Okay. One last call. Is anybody here to speak on the police traffic ordinance during the public hearing? Okay. Hearing and seeing none, we will close the public hearing on police traffic ordinance and move on to item 2, blight ordinance. This ordinance has been talked about for many, many years within the community. I think we had a revision several years ago, which continues to be an area of continued refinement that's been talked about in the community. The ordinance committee of the town council had adjourned and got a lot of input on this, looked at the other towns and what they do. And so what's before us tonight is an updated proposal by the ordinance committee to the town council, and the town council is now holding a public hearing on blight. So if anybody has any pros or cons, you want to come up and speak for or against either the current blight ordinance or this blight ordinance that we have tonight that we're proposing, please come on up.
I would like to know what other town blight proposals they have.
Sure. Why don't you come on up and just state your name and address for the record?
Okay.
So we can, because there's people watching, and we'll have this for the meeting minutes.
Okay, my name is Ruth Warner, and I live on 49 Mark Drive in Plansville. I have a problem with blight, and I live in a duplex. And they just allowed the wood to rot off, and there's animals all over the place. And I've been trying for 4 years to do something about this. If this ordinance doesn't pass, my home's going to continue to lose value. I have a copy of what a duplex looks like when one side is done and one side's not.
Sure, you could send it down.
I'm a senior citizen and a lifetime resident of Southington, and I would really appreciate this ordinance being passed and having some help to rectify the situation that I'm in. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Warner. For those who are here and might not be familiar with this, the objective of updating the blight ordinance is to clarify the language, what blight is and what blight is not, and also help to provide the town with some guidance and some procedures on how to enforce blight. Right now, the town has difficulty enforcing blight. It typically goes through the court system, can take many, many years, I think, as you've alluded to. And so the goal here is to create a framework for what blight might look like in our community, while balancing and respecting people's personal property, of course. The ordinance committee put this forward. So if anybody else has any comments or suggestions on blight related to this public hearing, you may come on up and speak during the public hearing now. And just state your name and address for the record, please.
Sure. My name is Mary Peterman, 71 Wilbur Street, Plantsville. I don't necessarily know that I'm in support of the new ordinances. I just know that a change needs to be made. So I'm here tonight to ask for specific clarification to all of the changes being proposed. Although I hold a master's degree and taught in town for 40 years, I'm unable to adequately interpret the proposed changes. I don't understand all of the language. So please pardon any misinterpretations, but I'd really like this to be at a layman's level prior to a vote. One thing I did notice is that there would be a change to allow grass and weeds to grow to a height of 12 inches, where the present document says 10 inches for 10 days. Does it really need to be any longer? 10 inches seems long enough. Also, there is mention of more than one unregistered car. Why this change? Why allow any if they're not stored properly? Why is there only a concern of overgrowth when it impacts access to a property? In my opinion, we need any new ordinance that is going to be more objective and less subjective. Severe overgrowth is unsightly, and believe me, I know, I've lived it for 22 years. What if the owner is not a resident, but a family member living out of state? Can the property be cleaned out and the town bill the owner, regardless of who lives there? This is something we need to look at, because right now we can just attach a lien on that property. For example, for us, we're going on the third generation of people not maintaining a certain property, neighboring mine, and a lien will have no impact on their upkeep. It just keeps happening. Is it possible to allow the zoning enforcement officer to access the whole property in question? I understand that presently they can only enforce what is visible from the street view. My backyard abuts the backyard of a property that has been declared blight. It looks like the property ends at a rotted fence. It does not. It extends the width of my backyard. For the first few years I lived there, the residents mowed that back lawn, and now for the past 15 years, it has been allowed to grow freely, hiding rotted fences and an unregistered boat for 22 years. We have at this point a mini forest of overgrowth behind my house, hidden only by my forsythia plants, so it's only hidden in the summer, as I keep letting it grow to hide this embarrassment. I have invited the town onto my property with each blight complaint I have filed. The residents will comply briefly and then hide other items from road view, not mine. Concerning the same property I've been filing complaints about for years, the residents have claimed low income and a disabled child living there. So I want us to look very carefully at what we are going to consider a hardship case. They claimed there was low income and a disabled child living there. The child did not reside there. He was dating the mother of a disabled child. There are able-bodied people residing there who are more than capable of maintaining this property. I'd also like to know at what point can a town move in to clear the yard? How do we know there isn't hoarding going on when a house is considered blight? We've heard some disturbing news of that recently, and I worry about the same for some of our blight properties. It seems like, from an ordinary resident's point of view, that the new ordinance may grant more power to the town, which I pray it does, but I'm worried about some of the criteria being lessened, and I'm concerned about that. I would like it much more strict. I believe the new ordinances should be as specific as possible in all areas. Just as an aside, could we consider maybe community service opportunities for clearing blight properties to allow the town to enforce their ability to clean and not get paid because of hardships? As you can see, this is a subject of great concern on my behalf and my neighbors who know I am speaking here tonight. We have had 2 blight properties in our neighborhood, both of them abut my property. One is being slowly resolved by new owners, very slowly. The other continues to deteriorate before our eyes on a daily basis and impacts our property values. Right now, there is a realtor attempting to sell a property across the street from this dwelling and has been in contact with one council member that I'm aware of and is filing their own blight complaint. In summary, I'd like us to please review every line in this new ordinance before passing it and consider what you would do if the blight in question was your next door neighbor. I appreciate your time and consideration is much appreciated, and I'd really like to hear line by line what the changes will be. And just for your info, I have a blight complaint dated 4/6/19 where I asked for help where it says this is a repeated attempt to have a property cleaned. There are abandoned cars, multiple, boats, garbage everywhere. There are trailers with mattresses and garbage that just sit. Please feel free to come on our property to see the back where the boats and the garbage can be seen. There also was an illegal apartment that I do believe that zoning took care of, and we need help. So I believe in what you're doing. I just want to make sure that we have the power to do everything we need to do to make all the properties in Southington acceptable to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Peterson. Did you want to provide that copy of that Blight complaint that you
Sure.
have? Why don't you pass it down and we'll get it to the town manager?
Thank you.
I have a Blight complaint too, but I didn't know.
Okay, Ms. Warner, if you have one that you want us to follow up on, you can grab that for us. Give it to the town manager whenever you have it. Okay. Okay. Anybody else who would like to come up and talk about Blight? Anybody else? Okay, come on up.
Just from a historical perspective, because I'm old now. Historical perspective. Yeah. Victoria Triano, 33 Bellevue Avenue. I just want to say, historically, we've had this problem. I'm so glad that you guys are taking care of it and looking at it and going through it. I feel the prior speaker was very clear in her concerns, and I think they were very valid. But we do need an ordinance that has a little bit of teeth in it, that we can come in as people are losing values on their homes. We've heard it all. One of the biggest complaints that require a lot of input on our part is when somebody files a blight concern, because we need to go out, we need to look at it, we need to see if we can do it. But right now, as was said by the chairman, we really could use something a little bit more focused and with a little bit more teeth. So I thank you for taking this on, and I'm hoping that it passes, and I hope that the ordinance as written will be able to have recourse for people who are in this situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Former Madam Chair. Please, sir, come on up. Take your time. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Steve Daddy. I live at 74 Hacienda Circle in Planceville. I like what you're doing, but I see where this goes to only mostly public property. I was just wondering what you do about stores who bring their old equipment and just leave it out and back behind them. I mean, if they're on a corner lot, you're going to see it from at least one side. And if they're not on a corner lot, does that give them permission to have their old and used equipment put in back? Because I think you would get a negative feedback from them that you're discriminating. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Mr. Daddio. Just for clarification,
Yes, sir.
were you talking about like businesses that
Yes.
have equipment that they store out back?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And I'm keeping a list here of all the questions. And obviously, if I miss something, you can let me know. But I think I've captured most of them. Before I close the public hearing, I will ask if anybody else wants to come up. What we'll do is we'll ask the town manager and maybe the ordinance committee members who are there, who can maybe give some insights as to how the language of the proposed ordinance is intended to be read. And we'll go through each one of these questions and ask if we, for the interpretation, and then this council will decide whether that interpretation is how they read it as well. And if we need to do some work on this, we can always table this later on, and we can continue the work to make sure that we get it right. But I think this council is also committed to making this right. So if we find something and it's not working, we'll adapt as well. So we'll continue to make strides in the right direction, realizing that sometimes you don't get it right always the first time or second time. Okay. So with that in the background, before I turn it over to the town manager and the ordinance committee, does anybody else want to say anything about the blight ordinance here at the public hearing? Before I start to direct the questions, I just want to make sure we won't go back and forth on this. So it's a public hearing, so now would be the time to collect all the input, and then the council will debate this a little bit later. So if anything comes up that's new, if you have something new, please feel free to raise your hand. We can invite you up. If it's something that we're talking about, we'll discuss that amongst ourselves, and we'll continue the dialogue. Okay, so let's talk about the first one. Bill, if you don't mind, since you're the ordinance chair, I'll kind of look to you and the town manager and those who are also, I know that Councilwoman DiPaolo is on the ordinance committee, right? So it might be difficult. Is there any other council members who are on the ordinance committee? Tony? Okay. And then we can open it up also for discussion later on. I want to get the questions answered so that if we have any other questions before we close the public hearing, well, we can get to those and collect additional questions that come up. One of the first questions I heard from Ms. Peterson was 10-inch grass to 12-inch grass. Just looking for some insights as to, did we purposely increase that strategically, or?
Discussion about the grass length. I think one of the things was that representation from the police department specifically was like, we don't want to be involved in measuring grass.
Right.
So I think we just left it with the foot. I don't have any objection of being 10 inches. I mean, if anyone thinks that's material to blight, I support that.
Okay. The 12-inch ruler is always easy to carry around, right?
Right, I
You don't
think
have
that's
to,
where
you
it
don't need to
comes
tape measure. Chris?
No, I agree with Ms. Peterson, like, what,
Yeah.
if it was in there and there's not a reason to change it, then I think we should maintain the original language.
Okay.
You know, unless there's a reason that
No, there
you did
wasn't.
change
You're
it.
right, Chris. There's no
So I
reason.
agree with keeping it.
And we can do the debate a little bit later. I just want to make sure we get the questions answered. So the answer is that there's no rationale. So later on, when we get into the discussion, if we want to make the change, we can talk about that. Okay. Why allow unregistered vehicles at all? Why, I think it says 2 or more, right? So why do we allow 1, but when 2 occurs, it's triggered?
I need to be directed to where, I'm not willing to just adopt that as what it says. I'd like to know where it says that. And
Okay. Anything else? You don't see in the ordinance where
I'm
it
not
says?
saying it's not there. It's
Okay.
probably a 11,000 word document, but I just want to be directed to where it says that.
Okay. So why don't we ask the town attorney to look into that while we're looking at some of the others. We're looking for references to unregistered vehicles so that we can reference them during the debate section, and we'll be able to, I know it's on page 2 here, we talk about citing the general statutes of the state of Connecticut, so we have to be careful about not making an ordinance that's contrary to that if we don't have the authority to do that.
Let me chime in just to make it easy
Sure.
to address that. While it's presented, it is under the definition section, section 203-3, and it's subsection 10. More than one inoperative or unregistered motor vehicle or visibly inoperative boats parked, kept, or stored on the property unless garaged in a permanent structure on the property. And if I may speak for the chair of the committee, we had, I say we, I'm not on the committee, I'm simply the attorney and the record keeper of it. I can tell you the committee had reviewed 6 or 7 surrounding towns' ordinances and did our best to incorporate as much of that language that they deemed appropriate, that would actually, using the operative word, provide the town with teeth. The discussion of an unregistered motor vehicle, 1 versus 2, did come up on at least one of the meetings, maybe 2. The concern was that many people have vehicles that are either being repaired, restored, they're historical, older vehicles that aren't typically registered, or if they are, they're registered seasonally for a show. The intention was not to handcuff the zoning enforcement officer. The intention was quite the opposite, to give broad powers and, to an extent, a fair amount of subjective findings as far as blight, not just related to cars and boats, but across the board.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. Did you want, anybody else who's on the committee want to talk about the rationale? Okay, so we can take that up a little bit later as well. There was a comment from Ms. Peterson about being more objective. more objective and less subjective. So where we see some of that in the language, if anybody wants to tighten up any language, we can talk about that. Okay, here's one, and I know that this was, I think that this was talked about, but somebody who lives out of state and owns a home here, and there's a blighted condition on the property that they own here. Can we bill them? How do we enforce when somebody's not living at the home? I know notifications in the past has been an issue, so I don't know, to the town manager, if you want to talk a little bit about that.
If I may, I'll answer that as well. The pertinent section is 203-7.
Thank you.
That's the enforcement provision. And one of the quandaries that came up at 3 of the meetings related to exactly as one of the residents, I believe it was you referenced, is suppose it's a tenant or a non-owner occupied premises. So once again, with the intention of keeping this ordinance very broad, there's a series of steps that the town will be required to follow. And they already followed 2 of the 3. What the committee adopted per the Connecticut General Statutes is actually providing notice. It was called the bode service by a marshal. So as opposed to the first round, if you will, of providing notice to the owner and sending certified mail, if there's not a response, a marshal then goes out and serves the owner, whether it be in hand or what's called the bode at the site. In addition to that, if it's in a non-owner occupied property, they're brought into the loop and they're held liable and responsible for the actions of their tenant or the vacant home. And that is in there, and again, it's broadly worded intentionally, but it does now require or allow not just the zoning enforcement officer the authority to proceed both civilly and criminally. And I know that we have spoken, ma'am, in the past with regard to your blight, and I'm sorry to hear that's not been corrected. But that there are matters that 2 right now that are being prosecuted criminally as well as civilly. But the notice requirements involve in-person, certified mail, and a marshal. In addition to that, unlike the previous blight ordinance, there is actually a zoning enforcement officer, which we have now, but also a zoning enforcement hearing officer that would be responsible and separate from the enforcement officer. So in that capacity, the zoning enforcement officer would actually be, for lack of a better term, or using it very loosely, would be almost like a prosecutor, meaning the one putting on the town's case. There'll be an independent individual and possibly more than one, because the ordinance allows the town manager, with town council's approval, to appoint more than one individual that will serve as the judge and jury in that regard. So there are now 3 safeguards for notice and 2 separate procedures, both civilly and criminally, to pursue blight matters. So for those of you on the council that probably already know this because it has been discussed briefly, but those in the public as well, I can tell you with complete confidence, this blight ordinance has legitimate teeth. Is it going to solve the problems that have been expressed tonight, overnight? Absolutely not, and we all know that. You know, the old saying is the wheels of justice move mighty slow, and unfortunately, or fortunately, depending which side of the fence you're on, there is due process and there is a system in place that hopefully will refute that. But I can assure everyone, without going through it line by line, that this is leaps and bounds ahead of what we had before. And I'm not on the committee. I'm speaking as a lawyer and as the record keeper for this. This is essentially the best of all of the surrounding towns' language incorporated into one. And for what it's worth, there were probably, and Councilman Deesa could answer that, 6 or 7 revisions made to ensure that it not only had teeth that cut, but also broad powers to allow our enforcement officer the ability to use his subjective as well as objective findings and pursue these matters. And by the way, he was brought in on this as well, as was planning and zoning, for comment and input as well. So it's not often I can say that I'm actually very, very proud of this blight ordinance. Could it use some tweaking? That's entirely up to the council. But overall, and 2 of the members are here tonight, I think this is probably one of the best blight ordinances that in this surrounding area. And I'd love to say to give them credit for it, but a lot of it was taken, the good from theirs, incorporating into ours.
Attorney Matacha, so if somebody lives away from the home in question, and say they live in Florida, they could be served in Florida by a marshal?
That's correct.
Okay, according to this.
That's correct.
Okay, and then the other thing, since you touched on it, you may as well answer the question, and we can open it up to Bill and Tony as well. What other towns did you use as examples? Can you give us a few of the towns that you might have benchmarked?
Of course. Cheshire, Plainville, Bristol, New Britain, and I believe Newington. And this is not their blight ordinance, but the committee reviewed all of those on multiple occasions and individually handpicked the good, the bad, and the workable, and managed to draft this incorporating a lot of that language.
I'll say that New Britain has invested in blight in the last 5 years. Mayor Stewart has hired somebody who is just enforcing blight because they have a significant problem. So using the New Britain language and collaborating in that way, I think, is also a great thing.
And we were in contact with the mayor's office specifically in that regard.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah, New Britain was very good. It's just, we don't have the same needs. They're more of a city. We're more of a suburban town, so we didn't feel we needed to have even more teeth. I mean, their ability to fine for abandoned refuse, $100 a day. I mean, and I think we wanted to go there as a suburban town.
Okay. Okay, thanks. Continuing on the list of questions, can the ZEO access the entire property?
I think there's probably a couple of constitutional amendments that.
Just
Right,
to
yeah.
answer
I know
that,
they can't go on the.
statutorily, the answer is no. We are prohibited as a municipality from doing so. It's a violation of Connecticut general statutes. However, once again, thinking outside the box, allowing the zoning enforcement officer the ability to do so, they can access a neighbor's property with permission and observe. They don't have to be on site to make a blight determination. So your concern, ma'am, is addressed in here for that reason.
Some of our regulations say that it has to be observed from the road.
That's
In this
correct. This one
case,
does
it does
not.
not need to be observed from the
Absolutely does
road. It
not.
can be an abutting property
But it
as long
would
as they have
not-
permission to be there.
But it would not be enforceable if we allowed any Southington municipal employee to access someone's property. More importantly, it's a pretty dangerous
Absolutely.
opportunity.
This is always a tricky one, and we've seen this a number of times, where a blighted property complies briefly, hides items, and then falls out of compliance.
And there's a safeguard in place for that as well.
Okay.
That involves the zoning enforcement officer, the notice provisions, and finally, and most importantly, the zoning hearing officer. So if they come up to standard, if you will, and then violate again, it's essentially a de novo, meaning they start all over again, but there's already a record of the complaint and the findings from previous.
Understood? Okay with that? All right, somebody who might claim, how do we define what a hardship is? Somebody who, the person who came up a little earlier said that they had a situation where somebody claimed low income, a disabled child, but maybe in their opinion, that wasn't necessarily what was reflective of the residents. Any comment there?
I think that's where, real quick, so I think that's where you need discretion, which is where you need leadership. So you're gonna trust your town manager, you're gonna trust your council, you're gonna trust the employees. Also, I think those terms, you're gonna need judicial gloss on that. So when someone challenges a blight ordinance, or someone challenges something, courts are gonna give you a little judicial gloss and say, what is a hardship? That's not really for us to our world to, in my opinion at least, to, define those amorphous terms like hardship, things like that.
And more importantly, it would be impossible to identify every aspect of a hardship and what a hardship is. It would be unfair to the residents and the complainants because, quite frankly, you couldn't possibly envision or anticipate every possible hardship. That's one of the subjective aspects of this ordinance, that a zoning enforcement officer or hearing officer will make a determination whether that hardship meets what would be traditionally classified as hardship.
Okay.
But to define it with facts would be impossible.
Okay, is there a definition on when the town can actually do something on the property? When can they move in and mow the grass or take care of a situation where there's a blighted situation that might be a health hazard to a neighboring property, et cetera.
I don't believe there's any provision that permits the town to enter private property and clean it up. And I don't know, and I'd be happy to report back to the council, but I believe section 7-148 of the Connecticut statutes does not permit a municipality to enter private property and clean it. Now, if there was a glaring health hazard, logic would dictate that they could in fact do so, but you're not gonna go on someone's property and mow their lawn.
Can we review section 203-5? Because in there it says cost of removal, and it says that the town shall have the right to collect from any owner of an unregistered or inoperable.
Yeah, that's the debris left on property. I'm referring to maintaining. The example being the photograph that was introduced. The town, I believe, and I'm not, please don't quote me until I double check that, and more importantly, the town cannot go on and paint the right side of the duplex.
Understood. But in the case, for example, where there was a lot of unsightly materials and it qualified and it met the blight, the town could actually remove that?
That's correct, yes, and that is found.
And there's a process that needs to be followed. They don't just do it, but they have to go through the process.
Correct. That's defined by statute.
Go ahead, town manager.
So there's two practical examples of that. One is where the town has gone to court and gotten a court order to allow the town on the property. We did that on a property on the southeast side of town that was just, there's stuff thrown all over the place. The building department had a cease and desist order there. And the second one where we can go on the property is when we have a health department that issues an order. So the health department has very broad regulatory powers when it comes to health and safety. So if there is a health department order, then the town can go there and enforce the monetary provisions through a lien.
Okay. Is there anything that in here that would prevent or promotes community service? So for example, if somebody said they needed a hand, they couldn't do it themselves, could you have volunteers come in and help?
I don't believe there's anything in the ordinance. I just want to say one thing. There's always help. 90% of blight is people are going through certain things and are having some troubles. There's many people on this dais who even recently have stepped up and donated time and services from their own companies to help people with blight, but that took almost a year to allow these people to go help. So while there's nothing in the actual ordinance specifically, the town of Sullyton has an amazing group of people in the community that will go on a moment's notice and help clear that out. It's just getting the property owners authority to get the help that they need to clean it up.
So,
And if I could add to that, although I think Alex appropriately answered it, one of the things that I've learned rather quickly becoming a blight expert in this respect, and I'm being sarcastic, is that there's a direct correlation, not always, but more often than not, between mental health and blight. Now, I'm not suggesting everyone in a blight property has mental health issues. I'm not saying that. I am saying that in the last 4 years, the vast majority, all with the exception of one that I'm aware of, and I've been town attorney for quite some time, on and off, has been coupled or bootstrapped with significant mental health issues with the residents residing in the home. As a standard protocol, the zoning enforcement officer works in relations with Department of Social Services and Department of Health to provide them with the help that they need, not just physically cleaning the property or bringing it up to snuff, but also trying to provide any other mental health issues associated with that. And there are 3 or 4 examples in the past year alone where that's happened.
excellent. And, I'm going to pause for 1 second and just give a shout out because our community services, so many people don't realize what our community services does. People see, Thanksgiving turkeys go out or Christmas meals, and they think that that's the extent of what community services does. But every single day, the community services in our town is doing something for somebody or multiple people. Whether it's cooking meals, and helping Bread for Life in collaboration, whether it's providing shelter every single day. There's calls for people who need shelter, whether it's heat or cold. whether it's clothing, and, you know, Janet Mellon and all the volunteers, I see a couple of them sitting here today. Maybe there's more of you as well, are constantly supporting, and whenever something occurs where it looks like somebody could use a hand, you know, the town manager, community services, even our emergency services, our police, our fire and EMS, they personally notify community services and try to seek if somebody needs help. And if they're willing to get help, then community services is there. And the last thing I'll say is, I'm not going to mention names, I'm not going to mention situations, but, you know, we've had blight instances in the past, and we don't take this ordinance lightly. You know, it pulls on our heartstrings a little bit, because on one hand, you know, we're homeowners too, we have family too, and we know that people fall on hard times. On the other hand, we know that there's neighbors who are affected sometimes when instances can't be rectified, and so it's a really difficult situation. And, you know, we had a recent one where we said, there's people on this dais who raised their hand and said, I'm willing to help, and went out personally and helped somebody who had a need. And so, you know, this council is not looking to be punitive. Each and every day, the members up here are not just serving on this dais, you know, twice a month, but they're serving on a regular basis and trying to help community members as well, and really working hard to help those who are in need. So thank you to all of you who are involved in that as well. Okay, and the last item before we wrap up here, stores, businesses who might be adjacent to a residential home. Can you talk a little bit about storage of stuff? I know that there's regulations from my previous planning and zoning life about outside storage and buffers, et cetera, but can you talk a little bit about unsightly materials from an adjacent business that might be blight?
Well, I think under your scope of provisions, it includes non-residential, and then using the term commercial and the definitions of commercial parking lots, I think would, you know, seem to reinforce that this could be used in one of those situations.
Right.
I mean, if I'm wrong, I'll defer to the town attorney, but, you know, there's two instances right there where it's referenced.
And that's correct.
And so to add on that, what that does by putting in business and commercial is it ties back to our zoning regulations. Our zoning regulations allow for certain outside storage of materials in certain places in a business, and in certain zones. So in some zones, for example, if you're a retail, you might be allowed to do some outside of displayed material for sale, right up along the building. In some zones, you're allowed to store equipment in the rear yard. So that's going to be dependent upon the adjacent property owner. Of course, if there's ever any question, a blight complaint can be entered and can be looked into to determine if there's any issues there. Okay, so with that, I want to just ask the council here. We have had some feedback. I see, you know, we had the 10-inch to 12-inch. We have the unregistered vehicles. If there's any objectivity here that needs to be tightened up. The only other outstanding thing, and we could talk about it a little bit later, but I do want to ask the question because the public hearing is still open. We had the issue of the blight board, the zoning enforcement blight officer, or the hearing officer. And last meeting we talked about whether that should be one person, two people, three people, multiple people, etc. And so before I close the public hearing, I want to ask the council, maybe a quick consensus here. We, of course, can talk about all of this later in the meeting, the details, and debate whether we want specific items changed or not. But the question I have for you here is, are we comfortable closing the public hearing tonight and taking this up later in the meeting and taking some decisions tonight? If we're not ready, if you don't think we're going to be ready to take a decision and we think we're going to table this, then we may as well leave the public hearing open until the next meeting as well. So, does anybody have a preference on that? Chris?
I just wanted to follow up again. I thank you for bringing that forward. I know I mentioned that at the last meeting, just concerns about having one individual. And I know we also discussed the reference to Connecticut General Statute 7-152C. So that does say municipalities must appoint one or more hearing officers who are not police officers or those who issue citations to conduct the hearings. So at least the Connecticut general statute does leave it open for the municipality to decide whether there's one or more. Again, my concern is, it doesn't have to be a lot, you know, I'm thinking maybe 3 members, doesn't need to be 5 or 7 or 9, but I'm thinking just at least 3 members, so there's some subjectivity to decisions that are being made.
But it sounds like you're saying that that's something we could discuss later in the meeting and probably come to a resolution on.
Yes. so
No
that-
need to keep the
that
public
change
hearing open.
Isn't in,
It's not here yet, right?
right, okay.
Yeah. But I mean, as far as this meeting, are we comfortable having the detailed discussion a little bit later? Have we received the input that we need? Yes. Yes. Okay, good. All right, so why don't we go ahead and close the public hearing on blight ordinance? Thank you so much for everybody who came out. We may or may not take final action tonight, but we will debate it later on in the meeting and see, where it takes us. I expect we'll take some action on it either tonight or the next meeting. Okay, with that, we're going to move now into our regular meeting agenda. Madam Clerk, can you call the roll?
James Morelli,
Here.
Tony Morrison,
Here.
Christopher Palmieri,
Here?
Jack Perry,
Here.
Jennifer Klock,
Here.
Michael Del Santo, Valerie DiPaolo, William Dietzick,
Here.
Paul Chaplinsky.
Here.
And before we move on, Councilwoman DiPaolo expresses her regret. She had made travel arrangements prior to this meeting, so that's why she couldn't be here tonight.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, why don't we all stand for a prayer and flag salute?
Heavenly Father, we ask that you would keep your hand upon us as we commit ourselves to the citizens of Southington. We pray for wisdom and clarity in our decision making, and we humbly ask for continued blessings upon Southington. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you, everybody. We're moving on to item 2, meeting minutes. Item A, regular meeting of June the 9th, 2025.
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from June 9th, 2025.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, motion passes unanimously 8-0. Item B, we're looking to table as we canceled our special meeting of June 20th, 25. That was canceled due to technology difficulties with our carrier and the links that we had. So we're looking for a motion to table that.
Table. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously 8-0. Item 3, councilperson communications. Yes, Councilwoman Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm going to talk briefly about the POCD, which is the Plan of Conservation and Development. If you recall, the state mandates that every 10 years the town prepare a plan of conservation and development for the next 10 years. I chaired our last plan, and so I'm also involved in this one as well. And we had our third meeting this week with the consultant, SLR, that was brought on. And right now we're working on data collection and community engagement, which is a really critical part of the plan, having our community members give their feedback. So there's going to be a survey that goes out. It's going to go out on July 7th. It will be a coordinated effort between the town and the committee. And it will be on social media, posted in town buildings, local community buildings, flyers. So we'll work to get the word out. So you'll see that coming. And it just covers a dynamic range of planning priorities like quality of life, housing, economic development, transportation, community facilities, open space, historic and cultural resources, and a vision for our town. So it's really important to be engaged in the survey. So I'll have more information when that comes out.
Any dates yet for the public forums?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. So we're talking in the next few months?
Yes.
Okay. I would strongly encourage everybody who's here and listening. There's been a lot of great dialogue and perspectives about planning for our community. Most recently, we've heard about affordable housing. We heard the governor and the legislature's activity. this falls right into that. So if you have a perspective on any planning activities in our community, we, every 10 years, do a plan of conservation and development, and we collect input during that 10-year cycle. And of course, as applications come up throughout the way during public hearings, but now is a great opportunity to have your public input for our planning for the next 10 years. So thank you for bringing that up. Any other questions? Please look for the dates in the future for when you can attend those and give some input. Okay, anybody else for Councilmatic? Chris?
Yes, I had the pleasure of attending the graduation ceremony for the class of 2025. Just like to acknowledge all the graduating seniors, and for this year, our top 3 students, Kriti Gupta, Kai Onan, and Emily Thompson, who were recognized at the graduation ceremony. Also, a special shout out to Ms. Reynolds, who is, this was her first graduation ceremony. She took over as the freshman principal who oversees the graduation ceremony with the promotion of Mr. Royan to principal of the building. So shout out to all of them, and we wish them well. Also, just fitting for the end of the year, just a celebratory announcement. The district announced the Paraeducator of the Year and the Teacher of the Year. So congratulations to Sherry Balarjan, who is the District Southington's Paraeducator of the Year. Sherry is a paraeducator at DePaulo Middle School. And congratulations to Kim Patroff, who is the Teacher of the Year. She's a 4th grade teacher at Hatton Elementary School. So special thanks to both of them for all their service and being recognized.
Wonderful. Thank you, Councilman Palmieri. Anybody else? Tony?
Sure. Yeah, I just wanted to take a brief moment. I was somewhat disturbed by a comment made by one of our councillors, Councillor Perry, to the press, to the TV news, about the federal authority of ICE. Now, ICE is what he said was that ICE, he believes, needs to get out of Southington and get out of Connecticut. Now, ICE is a huge organization. It has a number of responsibilities. It works on 400 different laws. But I think what Councillor Perry was talking about was to do with immigration, one of its functions, in fact, one of its biggest functions. And I think that kind of statement is, to me, is somewhat irresponsible, because what ICE does, I mean, you've got to understand, America is probably the most generous country for legal immigration in the world. It has been for the last 30, 40 years. 1 million people enter this country every year legally on visas or refugee programs or whatever, and we're glad to have them. If you have such a massive immigration program such as that, then there needs to be enforcement, because obviously you get people who want to jump the queue, and that's a huge amount at the moment. There's an estimated 15 million people at least who fall into the illegal category, and that has gone up 50% in the last 3 or 4 years because we opened the border. Now, those people do several things. Most of them are obviously, they're fine. Some of them are trying to get money for their families from various other countries, etc. However, there's a whole lot that are criminals, serious criminals, which we know from the actual rounding up of folks that's happened in the last few months. There's 300,000 children that have been are in this country. We don't know where they are. We believe a lot of them are being trafficked. Those need to be found. That's a thing from ICE. And in particular, you might say that the people that were arrested by ICE in Southington that prompted Councillor Perry's comments were working at a car wash. Okay. Now, that has a direct impact on us, in the sense that in the last few months, 1 million people have self-deported, because when you have a crackdown on illegal immigrants, then a lot of people leave automatically, right? Those 1 million people, the effect they've had, according to the Washington Post, is they've effectively changed the wage growth statistics of this country during that time. In essence, if you've got people working under the table, working for far less money than American citizens, when they leave, those wage growth goes up because you've got to pay people what we believe we should be paid in this country. So I think the most responsible thing for us to say as councillors is to people who are here illegally, obviously I think we can all agree criminals have to go, right? But people who are here illegally, working under the table or whatever, as those two people were, they have to go too, okay? Because they have an effect on this country, on the wages of this country. And also, the kindest thing we can do to those people, the kindest advice we should give them, is that they should leave, they should self-deport. If they do self-deport, and they can go to the government and say, look, I'm self-deporting, I'm here illegally, the government will give them $1,000 and an airline ticket to go back to their home country. Okay? I said again, we are a very generous country. Those people can come back to this country in a year. That's what the law says. All right? The people who were arrested a couple of weeks ago are gone for good. Once you're got rid of for legal immigration, you can't come back. Your American privileges are revoked forever. So I'm saying what I think a good message to people should be, certainly to immigrants who may be here, illegal immigrants in Southington, is self-deport if you can. If you're criminal, it's something else. But self-deport and try and come back in a year. And come back legally. This country has always 4 to 5 million people on the waiting list to get into this country legally. Okay? And we should honor those. That's it.
Thank you, Councilman Morrison. Anybody else?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Obviously,
Yes, Councilman Perry.
I have to reply to that. So I want to first start off with that. That was my opinion, Mr. Morrison. I think as elected officials, when we're called upon, we're all representing different electors, right? Or individuals that elect us. So with that being said, if that was your opinion, I know that, we received emails and media, reporters were trying to get a comment from somebody. I'm not scared to step up and say how I feel. My mom, my grandmother, my aunts, and my uncle came here as immigrants. And yes, I don't think there's anything more American than immigration. I think there is a right way. My grandmother, my mom, my aunts, and my uncle all came here legally. But also, I think it's important that, when I hear some individuals say, oh, well, we came here legally too, it's a little complex for my family to get here because times have changed. And I think that, there's a gap and immigration is a huge issue. And we're failing individuals with some of the guidance of what, they need to do to make it easy. It's no longer the day of Ellis Island where you showed up, you signed a journal entry, you put what you had, and you were, entered the United States. But I agree that we need stronger borders. We need to make sure that they're secure. But at the same time, we need to make sure that, the ones that, contribute to society, that we're trying to help them. Because I'll tell you, I have an immigrant, from Ukraine that works for me. One of the hardest working individuals. My grandmother, an immigrant from Poland, she used to work at a factory. She would walk there in the snowstorms because her car couldn't make it. She didn't call out sick ever. So, that was, more the sentiment on that. And it's concerning that here it is, we have illegal, criminals in our country, slinging dope, sex trafficking, committing crimes. These individuals show up to work every day, 6 days a week, for the last 8 years is what I was told. So I think there should be more of an intervention of, okay, did maybe one of your documents expire? Do we need to get that? Because, I know people that have gone through the immigration process that takes 3 years. You miss a date, you get told you have a hearing next week. Then some people are showing up and being detained. Obviously it's a national level issue and it's very complex, but it's also a scary one that individuals came to our community, yes, federal agents, but at the time nobody knew. And, they're dressed up, not as, what people would consider police, and they're grabbing individuals saying you're being detained. That's a very scary thing. That if it starts, that next thing you know, somebody may be getting kidnapped. And if you look and research, the news, it's happening in other states that people are literally pretending to be ICE and committing crimes. And I also believe there's a due process that these individuals on a national level is not happening. They're not going in front of a judge for immigration hearings, and their voice, they have rights once they're here, to hear out how they're here. Maybe there's, some sort of amnesty. There's got to be a process. Just, again, hurting, individuals, I looked at those as individuals that gave back to our community, and at the same time, there's a lot of confusion, didn't know what was going on. I asked the town manager to reach out to the police department to see if they could, maybe reach out to ICE so that we know that it was ICE, because for the longest time, I think the news media found out it was ICE before we did, and that was 4 or 5 days later. So it's scary that us as a council, we don't know what's going on. I get it that it's outside of our thing, but at the same time, when you have residents and there's a concern, are these actual ICE agents or not? I think, me giving my opinion is my opinion. And I think every one of us on this council, or even any resident, has their opinion. So to sit there and shun somebody for thinking differently, it's just wrong. We could agree that we all have maybe a different color, that's our favorite color, but to sit there and judge me because my favorite color is different than yours, I don't think is the right, way to handle it, Mr. Morrison.
Thank you. And we're not going to continue to go back and forth, you guys. So, yes, Councilman Del Santo.
So, Mr. you were quoted as saying that ICE needs to get the hell out of Southington and needs to get the hell out of Connecticut. Do you still stand by that phrase? But you're quoted, you were on the news saying that.
Absolutely. How they're handling things currently, absolutely.
So the people at the car wash, what we found out through the news, that have been here for 8 years illegally, and you don't think that every night their head hits the pillow and think, is tomorrow the day? Is tomorrow the day? Is tomorrow the day? Especially in this climate, especially in this history of the last couple of months, the way that immigration is being handled. I assure you, when they pulled up into that gas station, those folks working there who are not residents of this country, they knew who was coming. They didn't think it was a tooth fairy. It was ICE. And when they got out of their car, they say, we're from immigration control. Okay, so to say that they were kidnapped, to say that they didn't know what was happening, I assure you, they knew what was happening. And I'm disappointed in it. I go to that car wash, I'm a customer there, they work very hard, but we as town councilors cannot tell someone to enforce a law. Okay, there are laws out there that they don't have to tell anyone they're coming to Southington. That's their job. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Del
So,
Santo.
Mr. Chair, I'm just going to end on one thing.
Yeah, last time, Jack.
Nobody
Thank you.
was there, and I think that was more the alarming thing. Mr. Del Santo is stating that, maybe he had firsthand experience that he knew that these people knew. I don't know that. I don't know the facts. I don't know all the details. There was a student from Meriden that went for a normal check-in, and got detained. So, again, I know we don't know all the answers. That's my feelings on the issue. And until you have all the facts, nobody could sit here and make an educated decision, because it will not be educated unless you know all the facts. So speculating on things, I don't think is the right way either.
Okay, so I'd like to address your comment, Councilman Perry, about the fact that you contacted the town manager and asked him to contact ICE. And I would just like to state for the rest of the council here that no council member here is authorized to direct the town manager to contact a federal agency and ask the town manager to do something on behalf of the town or this town council without that coming to me first with an agenda item, this council taking it up as a debate, and this council voting as to whether we want to direct the town manager to contact the federal government on a policy decision. So I would ask every town council member to please ensure that we're following the rules. Now, I wanted to also just address one thing. ICE contacting Southington and Southington telling the town council as a heads up, this town council has a problem keeping executive session private. we're going to not be told about ICE coming to the town council and telling us that they're going to be doing their business. So I think it's a little unreasonable that we're gonna ask town councilors to keep that private. And the last thing I'm gonna say on a much lighter note is, since everybody's talking about immigration, I'm gonna just say that my family also immigrated. My father immigrated from Germany, family as a result of the war. And I'm gonna give my father a shout out because my father was very young when he came to the United States. And he went to Vietnam to fight for our freedom, and wasn't naturalized as a citizen yet. And while in Vietnam, my father was called to Hawaii to become naturalized. And the U.S. Army flew him on a moment's notice to Hawaii. He got naturalized as a U.S. citizen and went back to Vietnam to fight for our country. So, Dad, I love you. Thank you for everything that you've done, and the family as well. Okay, why don't we move on?
Mr. Chair,
Council,
can you
I don't
read
want to
my
keep
email,
going.
though? Can you
I
read
don't
my
wanna-
email that I sent?
I don't want to keep going.
You took it
We'll
out of
submit
context.
it. I didn't. You asked the town
Can I
manager to
read it then?
contact
I
ICE.
have it in front of me.
We'll submit it to the record, okay?
No, can I read it? I
No,
have
we're
it
going
in
to
front of me.
submit it to the record, Jack. Everybody
Okay.
can do it later. Thank you. All right. Anybody else have council person communications that hasn't spoken? All right, hearing none. Moving on to item 4, reports of special committees. Item A, apple harvest.
Okay, we had our meeting on Wednesday, June 11th. A couple items acted on at that meeting. We did move forward with awarding New Britain Transportation as the shuttle bus vendor. There was a change in the pricing from the previous festival, but we did try to go out to RFP for that, and at the end of the day, NBT ended up being who was awarded that contract. Also, we are now looking for, prior to our next meeting, a vendor for our fireworks. Our vendor from last year was not able to maintain the price, so therefore we had to put out an RFP. So an RFP is available, and we are looking for anyone interested that could provide our show. The proposal is available through the manager's office, and we're asking for those to be returned to us by Tuesday, July 8th. And that was it.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions on apple harvest? Hearing none. Item B, technology.
Yes, we had, so our technology committee is an ad hoc committee, so we just had a touch base to get our committee formally introduced to our IT director, Mitch Gugliotti, who presented much of the same that he presented here, and some of what you'll hear tonight, but we went over a summary of internet updates, fiber updates, firewall updates, all of the initiatives that will be making our town more secure and more efficient. And if you recall, earlier last year, our team presented the following suggestions based on interviews with staff, and we prioritized everything. And honestly, these really weren't nice to haves. They were necessary to maintain our IT infrastructure, and Mitch also recognized that as well. Obviously, has an extensive background. That's why he has this job. And so cloud migration and our service upgrades are happening, moving toward email migration, the payroll upgrade, staff training, camera updates, and a soft phone environment eventually. These are all things that the committee identified, and it was important feedback from the town staff that drove that as well. So I just want to thank Mitch for all his hard work, and happy to see we are in alignment with the committee.
Excellent. Any comments or questions on technology from the council? Okay, hearing none. Item C, America 250. Tony.
Yeah, I certainly haven't done anything since I last chatted. The last meeting, we left it with we would look for recommendations to form a committee that had essentially inputs into pretty much everything that we do in town to make sure it was a comprehensive celebration. I haven't received any, so I would like to suggest that this is pushed off to the next meeting, and we could come back with recommendations, and we would have a full-blooded discussion on this. I would suggest it would be an item on the agenda. I'd certainly like to ask the town manager as well as us for nominations for people and capabilities that should be represented on this committee, and then we can discuss that.
I did hear from 2
I
volunteers,
did, sorry.
Tony, so I'll talk to you offline about those, and we'll
I've
present the
been
full
out
name.
of action last
Maybe
year.
if we can come up with a few, Chris, and then maybe to the
Yeah.
town manager as well. If you can nominate some departments or staff, like, I think we had talked about library and Barnes possibly being involved. If they have a kickoff and they decide, it's not, like, for example, if historical or Barnes isn't gonna be involved, which I doubt, then Christina can drop off, but at least for the first couple touch points, Chris.
I was just going to say, I actually spoke to Christina Volpe today. She is interested.
That's what I figured.
in being on the America 250. So I
We
didn't know
would
if that was
love
one
that.
of your names, but I want to submit her name, and I
Absolutely.
think she'd be fantastic.
If there's a couple others, Alex, who would like to be involved, especially if they're willing and interested, I think it'll be a great thing to do.
Yeah.
Yep. Phil Wooding, our historian, if he's interested. Okay. Any other comments on America 250? Let's get that wrapped up and hopefully start the planning so that in the back half of the year we can begin doing some stuff. Okay. Item 5, Town Manager's Report and Communications.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. The first thing on my report is the Board of Finance met recently. Your minutes are there. They met June 9th. The big thing that I want to call everybody's attention to, because every meeting you typically vote and approve the minutes, and then all the transfers that the Board of Finance made become quote-unquote law. This one actually has some money coming out of the reserve fund. So I want to call that to your attention before you approve the minutes, because you will be approving about $80,213 out of the reserve fund, and that's specifically for the Calendar House handicap van that came. The original proposal came from the Town Council Transportation Subcommittee. They brought that to the Board of Finance. In short, the Calendar House Dial Ride program will often send 16 or 12 or 9-person buses out with one person in them, to Cheshire, Newington, West Haven, other places. It requires a CDL to get them there, and it's also 6 miles per gallon to get them there as well. Getting more of a residential van allows us to bring those 1 or 2 people there with their caretaker. We don't need a CDL to get them there. It opens up the door to have volunteers drive. It opens up the door to have other staff members drive if there's a pinch, and to help get our residents to their doctor's appointments or wherever they need to get. So I want to call that to your attention before you vote. And that's $80,213 that came from the Town Council Transportation Subcommittee. I don't know if Tony has anything he wants to add. He was a member of that committee, or still is, I believe.
The chair, I believe.
Chair, yes.
We recommended it, and it's a wonderful decision taken by the Board of Finance.
Great. Glad to hear that we're servicing more of our community members through the Dial a Ride program and the Calendar House.
The second item I have is, I'm very, very, very pleased to announce that Local 1303-26 of ASME, the more commonly known as the Public Works Union, and the town have tentatively come to an agreement. The union ratified the proposed contract, which is in front of you, last week, 29/6, and I'm recommending this contract as well. We did this without any legal counsel on either side. We sat down many times. I actually went to the highway garage a few times and met with the entire staff, talked about their concerns, talked about what was important to them in the contract. As you know, we're in very difficult times, and finances are tough, and the workers understand that. So what I said to them was, help me help you. Like, if you can provide cost savings to the town, we can compensate you for that, we can reward you for that, and they really did. We sat down, we came up with some really good ideas and how we can be much more efficient every single day and throughout the year, and these gross wage increases reflect that. They're a little bit higher than I originally had planned, but the benefit the town getting will outweigh that very well. A couple other notes there. There's a revised work schedule for the summer. As you see today, it's very hot out. So we're gonna do a trial run in this contract. through the summer period. We're gonna do a 6:30 start. And we're gonna get out a little earlier. And then the leaf season is gonna be a 7 a.m. start to a 5 p.m. with an additional 15-minute break.
Okay, any questions on the collective bargaining for the Public Works? Okay, item C, generator servicing recommendation.
This comes every couple of years. We went out to bid. We had 5 bids on this. This is for all generators on the town side, not the Board of Education. So every single generator that we have, we went out to bid. The town staff has recommended A&J generator for a total cost of $17,695. That's for an annual service contract for all the generators in town.
Okay, any questions on generator servicing? Chris.
Just a comment.
Yep.
I believe this was Planet Bids that you utilized for this process.
Yes, this
Okay.
went out. Planet Bids is becoming the norm for us.
Which is great.
Still not getting a lot of digital submissions, but it's helping. I believe it's helping us get more bids coming in.
Excellent. And I hope it's streamlining the process for the town a little bit.
It is, and this historically stays there for the public to see.
Right.
So as far as FOIA requests go, you can just log on there, and there's no FOIA requests. It's just all right there. You can see who bid, who won the bid typically.
Great. And I would like just to acknowledge and thank Councilman Perry for bringing that to our attention. I know it's been very beneficial. So, Jack, thank you for doing that for the town.
Absolutely.
I got a quick question. Last year when it went out to bid, did we use Planet Bids? Do you know?
I don't know if we did.
I think we did.
Should have.
Planet Bids was like 3 or 4 years.
Well, not everything was starting to be put on it, because it takes a lot of legwork for the town staff to create the documents, but then once it's there, it allows them to tweak it and, as times change, allow them to change the variables that may be there. I just was curious, statistically, getting this many bids, I don't think we see many things that come across the council with this many bids. So that's, refreshing, because Planet Bids will also help alert, these business owners, especially a lot of them are small business owners. They're busy. They may be, having staffing issues, vacation, family matters. So this will allow it not to kind of, slip away. So it's nice because now we keep continuing to build our base of bidders so that, hopefully it just continues to increase. So that's why I was curious if we used it last year and then what the comparison would have been.
I don't believe we did, but next year it's gonna be very beneficial because all they're going to have to do, like you said, is just click, rebid, and it just goes out, update the date, and we're done.
Quick follow-up question, Mr. Chair.
Yes, please, Mike.
I wasn't sure if Mr. Perry was on.
You're all set, Jack? right?
Yeah, thank you.
So the question, what do you do with paper files that come in? Do you scan them into the system,
We
or
scan them in.
I remember talking about this.
A date.
They were handwriting them. They were coming in like pencil.
We still get some that are coming
Like an
in
eraser
on a
rough.
piece of paper. We scan them into a file.
Okay.
We take them in paper. People walk in with paper every single time.
Someday we will fully digital. Someday. All right. Any other questions on that one? Awesome. Good discussion. All right. Item D, update on fall referendum, school roofs and open space.
This is more of an informational. As you are aware, you passed a budget this past spring. In that capital plan, there was a call for 3 elementary school roofs. That was north of $6 million, and in order to do that, we're gonna have to bond it. They call it to bond that, which goes to referendum. I'm working with bond counsel. In the July meeting, you're gonna have some agenda items related to that, the ordinance of the bond, the introduction of the bond ordinances for you to start the process to get that on the election. We have to get that to the Secretary of State by September 15 of this year.
So the 2 bond ordinances that we'll take up in debate at the next meeting, we'll have to move through the process in order pretty quickly because we only have a couple meetings in the summertime. So hopefully we can get through that and get it to the state by then. On the open space, I was talking to the town manager about that because the Board of Education is not putting forward the larger referendum this year, and it's going to be sometime next year. We're going to need some open space money and fill our open space funding again. So the thought was, instead of waiting till next year when it could be with the school, we would bring it forward and talk about it this year. So we can talk about that at our next agenda.
Not tonight.
Any other questions on that? Okay, item E, IT licensing review.
Just very briefly, we are coming up on the fiscal year, so we're doing some digging. Just last week, I was looking at renewing our Zoom account, and I happened to notice that we were paying for 10 licenses with 3 users. So I did some more digging, and I talked to our IT department, and then I realized we had 3 or 4 different vendors for online meetings with a bunch of licenses. So I have instructed our IT staff to go through and cull all the duplicative services we're paying for, because this is, while it's not a ton of money per user, it's low-hanging fruit, and it's unacceptable that we're stewards of the taxpayers' funds. And so the IT department's gonna be going through and making sure that we are not paying for services twice going forward. It's just something I wanted to bring to your attention, that I found that bothered me, that we are correcting it right away.
Any questions on IT licensing? Okay, thank you for tightening that up and saving us some money. We'd appreciate that. Item 6, town attorney's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My report is, being very brief, 22 Main Street, otherwise known as the Bank of America property, is progressing along. There's not an anticipated closing date yet, but it's expected within the next week or two, we will actually have a closing date. There have been no cogs in the wheel. Everything's been moving along smoothly as far as that goes. Any questions on 22 Main Street?
22 Main? Anybody?
Okay.
Okay. Town of Plainville Crescent Lake easement.
Yeah, this is something that I was hesitant or going back and forth on to even bring up, because ordinarily this falls within the purview of the town manager. But I wanted the public to be aware, as well as the council if they weren't, that this is a project that, I don't mean to single them out, but the town manager's been working on for the better part of 8 months. And it's pretty rare that we work with another town and establishing an easement that will allow not just Plainville residents, but more importantly, Southington residents, access to our open space for trails. It also allows for motor vehicles for the purpose of maintaining access and egress onto the property, that being Shuttle Meadow or Crescent Lake area. So even though it's not something that requires action on behalf of the council, I want the council and the public to be aware that we have a draft easement agreement that will require or will allow our residents access across all of the land for the purpose of utilizing the space that we purchased some 20 years ago or 19 years ago.
Okay.
I have a quick question.
Please, go ahead.
So who is we'll do a little property 101 here. Who is the serving and who benefits from the easement?
We do, town of Southington.
So it's in our favor.
That's right.
And I think there's a grant coming back as part of this, right? That if we grant the easement, then we also, I think we entered into a relationship with the town of Plainville a little bit ago on a joint purchase. And this joint purchase, now that we shared the cost of that, we also can share the benefit of the grant coming back if we offer the easement. And the easement, just for clarification, you had mentioned it's for motor vehicles. It's only for town motor vehicles, like ATVs or whatever, to maintain it, right?
That's correct.
Not public motor
No,
vehicles.
I should have clarified
Yeah.
that. And there is a map that's with all of your documents that was prepared by Cratchit and Jones back in January that highlights the property as well as the easement access way.
Okay, any questions on that?
I know Paul's usually up there with his compass, so he'll be able
I have no
to
doubt.
find this
Protractor.
really easily.
Yes, I have no doubt. From what I hear, he's gonna be paving the walkway as well.
Sure.
Sidewalk.
Sounds good. Thank you for the acknowledgement. All right, any other questions on that one? All right, let's move on to item 7, public communications. Anybody here from the public who would like to come up and speak? Please state your name and address for the record.
Regina Coviello, 12 Beecher Street. I just want to kind of clear something up, because things that were said here earlier could have been handled differently. 2 weeks ago, I was here before the meeting. I had seen a thing about the ICE agents. Curious, because my granddaughter works literally right next to there. Didn't believe the post I saw because of who did the post. Wasn't 100% sure. So right here before the meeting,
I asked just a question, and Alex and Jack and Val were here, and I just asked if it was true. Okay? And I was told it wasn't, and Alex, you did tell me you had made some phone calls and found out it wasn't. So everyone's going at Jack and whatever about this. It was just a curious question of wondering whether it was true. Something that happened at 9 o'clock in the morning, and it's now 7 o'clock at night. Okay? Curious question. That's it. And if someone doesn't know or don't answer, say, I don't know. But if somebody tells me here, I trust you people. If you tell me something, I'm going to believe you. Okay? And so I believed it wasn't true. Simple as that. Okay? And as far as immigration, I believe the right way is how you do it. But I do want to state one thing. I've been here my whole life. There always has been people here illegally. Okay, when are the businesses that are hiring them going to get fined? If they didn't hire them, they wouldn't come here. Okay, and there's a lot of places all over this town, other towns. So don't hire them. And if they're good workers, help them. Help them become citizens. And that's about it for me.
Thank you, Regina. Anybody else who would like to speak during public communications? Please come on up. Anybody else? Okay, hearing none, we will close public communications. We're going to move on to item A, old business, and for our remote participant, Vice Chairman Jim Morelli, this is just a reminder to unmute yourself because I think you're first to act tonight. Okay, item 8, old business, action on police traffic ordinance.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve police traffic ordinance.
Second.
We have a motion from Mr. Del Santo and a second from Mr. Morrison. The floor is open for discussion. Anything, Mike?
No, I think it's pretty straightforward. I read through it. No questions. We didn't have any questions from the public tonight. I think the ordinance committee did a good job with this one.
Okay, Chris?
Just a comment, I wanted to thank the town attorney. I know we raised issues about the $25 to $50 at the last time. Upon his research that he shared with the whole council, I think it's very appropriate and in line with what it should be in the ordinance. So thank you for that, Lou.
Shocked at some of those prices.
I know, me too. That's lower. But thank you, Lou.
Thank you. Anybody else on the traffic ordinance? Okay, hearing none. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Morelli,
Yes.
Morrison,
Yes.
Palmieri,
Yes.
Perry,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Del Santo,
Yes.
Dietzick,
Yes.
Chaplinsky.
Yes, the motion passes unanimously, 8-0. Item B, action on blight ordinance.
Mr. Chair, I think we heard some good information tonight. I think there were some questions, although I think it's really good, but I think we can maybe tweak it a little, change a few things, and we may have an opportunity to maybe table it tonight and then come back at our next meeting and really push it through with some, with any improvements or additions or subtractions from it. I don't know how anyone else feels, but
Yeah.
I'll make a
Before
motion.
you table it, though.
Oh, right, I don't want to table
Yeah.
it yet, then we can't have discussion.
Yeah, so I'd like to get some of the items on the table that we want to touch up, even if we can't finish it tonight. Let's at least agree in principle on things we want to finish, and we might ask the town attorney to help us with any changes. So, Chris, you were going to say something?
Well, I was going to ask before because I agree with that, everything Mike said. But what is the process? Is this going to go back to the ordinance committee? Is it going to be just the town attorney making revisions based on our conversation tonight? How are we going to move forward? Just so I know before we make any motions tonight.
I would suggest we discuss it. It doesn't sound like a lot of the things here are super meaty.
Okay.
We've talked about some of them, so my recommendation is we discuss them. We put them on the table, we agree on a consensus on each one and the direction we want to take each one, and we can have the town attorney come back with the revised proposed language.
All right, so with that, I think the grass, it sounds like we already agreed
Yeah.
to that. I mean, unless there was a reason to change it, I say keep it.
12 to
the way it was
10.
based on- Yep,
Keep it the way it is.
keep it the way, same thing with
Lou,
motor.
would you, hold on, I'm sorry, Chris. Would you just do me a favor and just take down also some of these notes?
Sure, I'd be happy to. My only concern is,
we may have
If
to go
we're
back.
making any changes to the ordinance, I believe we're required to keep the public hearing open or have another public hearing. I could be mistaken, but
Unless it substantially changes. Right, so let's hear them all now. If it doesn't substantially change, then we could vote on it. If it does, if we feel it substantially changes, we can decide to either pass it as is and update it, or we could repost the public hearing.
okay.
Okay? Or we could, I'm trying to think, can I reopen the public hearing with a vote?
No,
I don't think we can, right?
We can reschedule it, though.
I mean, we could
renotice
repost
it.
it for the next meeting anyway, so it's not, we would have to add an agenda item tonight, an action to create another public hearing,
I don't
so.
think we'll need to. I really don't, unless something really huge comes up in this discussion.
Okay, let's keep going though. We got 12-inch grass to 10-inch. That's an easy one. I would say that's not too material.
The other thing I think is positive is the whole reason we're having this discussion is because of the public hearing.
Right.
Which is why it works. I mean,
Yes.
that's the whole point of having public hearings. I wish more people came out
Yeah.
for future public hearings. But the motor vehicle, we've talked about that for years too. I mean, I used to serve on the ordinance committee. I remember years ago when I was on the committee talking about that too. I'm a little concerned that it's now more than one. And I know even back then we talked about, are you doing some type of maintenance? Is it an old-fashioned vehicle? A lot of those are put in garages, which is how you get around that because you're not parking, having a parking lot outside. So again, Bill, unless there was reason to modify that, it has been one. Did anyone come forward at the committee
What it
level?
was, Chris, is this is kind of one of the compromise positions again, like, you can be super stringent, super lenient, or in the middle. I think this was a compromise position. I don't remember one being specifically addressed, but that's how I would say it is. I mean, think about the person that has a boat in their backyard that you just haven't gotten around to. I mean, is that Blight? Like, just like think about it. Like, is that someone we want to? I don't know, but a boat, two boats, okay.
Yeah, and if it's registered, right?
That's exactly why we did it the way it is. That's exactly the reason why.
But if it's registered, to your point, if there's a boat, even if you have 2 or 3 boats, if they're registered, then it's not considered blight. But why do you have multiple non-registered vehicles?
So Chris, if you were going to change it, what? Show me. Maybe you could call out what you would
not
change.
change it. See, the original, it was for a vehicle. So
Right.
Same thing like with the previous conversation. Was there a reason to suggest, and I guess I'm hearing maybe just,
That's exactly
did
right.
people come forward and ask for that compromise, or?
No, we discussed among ourselves based on some feedback we got from Lou and some of the other town ordinances.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, please,
I
Mike.
think the process now is the zoning enforcement officer goes out and notices an unregistered vehicle. And it's usually on milk crates and it's
Yeah,
falling
right.
apart. But they allow, I think, I remember, because I had one in my neighborhood, and the guy had like 6 cars, but it was one, and they give them, I think, 45 days to get it registered. And they leave them alone for like a month and a half, and they come back in a month and a half, it's still not registered, it's gotta go. So they're given, I think that's the way this went, because people were calling me in my neighborhood saying, this guy's got 6 cars, they're on top of each other, and he doesn't touch them, they just sit there. But I wanna say the zoning enforcement officer, I think was Frank at the time, Frank Vinci, 100 years ago with his golf club. And he said, he went and he gave him like 45 days, and when he went back, the guy didn't do anything, so that he had to remove all the cars from the property. So he's one of my favorite neighbors now. He's not.
Okay, Jack.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have to, I guess, echo the same thing. I don't think there's any, I know somebody said earlier, well, if somebody's working on it, collector vehicles. I own a collector truck. I don't leave it in my driveway to allow the sun to beat on it. I put it in storage, and it's registered, it's insured, pay taxes on it. Those classic vehicle taxes are nearly nothing. Same thing with insurance on them, because you don't drive them. So I would be, in favor of, kind of strengthening, that language so that, we kind of take the ifs out, because I'll tell you, somebody with a collector vehicle is not keeping their vehicle outside in plain view. So I think it being, unregistered, you know, for a certain point of time, it needs to be registered, you need to be paying taxes, because it's also property taxes and such, and then at that point, you know, some vehicles will then sit there and then just decay until they become really unsightly, so then it becomes a bigger issue. So I think we try strengthening that.
So how about if I change the wording to one or more inoperable / unregistered vehicles?
Which section?
I'm referring to 2033, section 10, the definition of blight, state of disrepair. So right now it reads more than one inoperative or unregistered motor vehicle, so on, and it goes on. Suppose I change that simply one or more. I think it addresses everyone's concerns.
Yes, I would agree.
And the council wants me to change the grass from a foot to 10 inches?
Yep.
Okay.
And then I want to just bring up another thing. You know, I know Bill chairs this committee as well as Tony co-chairs it. And after the last council meeting, you know, and it being put for public hearing, I did my due diligence by pulling the agendas and meeting minutes for the last 3 meetings. I have some great concerns that on 3/26, the meeting minutes start off was that there was no quorum, there was public input, but no names of, you know, the public, and then new business, things
Sorry,
start.
which meeting agenda are we talking
3/26, March 26th.
Oh, the ordinance.
about? Oh, the ordinance committee.
Yes. That's what we're talking about, is the ordinance at the moment. And Dezek
Okay.
chairs it and Tony Morrison co-chairs it.
Okay.
So in those meeting minutes, you know, it says no quorum, public input was there, but no names. I think it was one individual. Then it says new business, and then things start passing unanimously. Like, I don't know who was there, what was happening, and even some of the minutes don't even state, you know, who made some of these motions based on the 3/26 meeting, the 4/23 meeting, and the 5/28 meeting. So I guess my ask is of the chair and the co-chair, is that, you know, you guys maybe change up your agendas, because I think you guys also should be approving your previous meeting minutes and not just, you know, kind of, if you go through it, one of them says, you know, residents spoke, it's no quorum, votes made, meeting minutes, you know, not anywhere in the discussion, who's in the quorum when the roll call is made to make it, you know, who's in attendance. Like, our meeting minutes says who's here, who's not. You know, motions of, you know, things passing unanimously. Some of them don't have first and second motions of who made them. Just a lot of concerns, you know, on how these meetings are happening. And I think they're complete violations of FOIA as well.
Okay.
I mean, we didn't have a quorum on one, Jack, so we just, you know.
No, but
We
there
didn't do
was,
anything.
there was action.
If we can, maybe we could focus on.
There was
this.
action on 3/26.
Let's
there was
but let's
no
just take,
no
maybe we
quorum.
could take that, we could take that as a separate agenda item, because we're trying to get through the ordinance.
But I guess I'm trying to bring that up now because
Understood.
we're talking about the ordinance.
I know, but we're
and
not-
there's at least 7-8 residents that spoke there that we don't even know what they said or who they were.
Understand. The subcommittee meetings are they're not verbatim. We don't take, you know, it's really who was in attendance, the date, the time, what the agenda is. It's noted, but I don't think we can, if you want to talk about that towards the next meeting, or if we want to have the town manager take an action to follow up and check on the meeting minutes with the chair of the committee, we can do that.
Yeah.
Other than that, I'm not sure what else we could do. We're in the middle of a debate
discussing
on an
ordinance that was discussed at these meetings.
Right, but we're not talking about meeting minutes, Jack. It's a subcommittee, so regardless of what that subcommittee does, this body is the governing body, not the subcommittee.
No, I get that, but how do you know what happened at those meetings if the meeting minutes aren't being taken verbatim, or not verbatim, just
They're not,
accurately who's
they're not
there?
gonna be verbatim. No quorum was determined. I say,
No. So you're going on the record that you're saying on 3/26, no quorum, no action was taken.
what I'm saying, what I suggested to you is we can have the town manager and the town attorney look into it and see if anything needs to be, come back to the town council as an advisement or to the subcommittee as an advisement. Corrections, we'll take your comments under advisement and ask them to look into it. Beyond that, we're in the middle of an
Yes.
agenda
No,
item to
I-
approve an ordinance.
I agree, but I'm just mentioning that while I was doing my due diligence, I came across that. So
Thank you.
that was the relevance.
Thank you for doing that. And besides that, if there's other suggestions, I'm happy to hear them, but I'd like to talk about the ordinance that's before us in the public hearing we just had. Chris?
I mentioned it earlier, it's the same thing again. The committee, whether we have one individual versus
Right. That's something we gotta,
Again, I just really think it's better for us to have more than one person making decisions. And again, I'm not suggesting any more than 3.
okay. So we have a suggestion to change 1 to 3 on the ZEO hearing. Well, instead of a
Hearing
ZEO,
officer.
you'll have a hearing officer plus 2.
Yes.
That's section 203-7D for everyone.
203-7.
Page 4.
Bottom of
D.
page 4.
Yep, 203, yeah.
What is the, Mr. Chair?
Yes, please,
What
Jen.
is the process of getting to this person or people? Again,
Well, if it's a town manager's appointment, so
Okay.
we might have some suggestions for the town manager.
no, sorry, I'm wording it wrong.
Put the complaint in, you mean?
Right, like what are there any steps prior to this appointed person receiving the edict to make a decision?
Yes, there are several, if I may speak,
Please.
there are several steps. It is doubtful it's unlikely there'll ever be a hearing. These are normally done and have historically always been done long before there's a hearing, whether it be in a civil court or through the town. It's usually handled between the planning and zoning department, the zoning enforcement officer of that department, and the homeowner. If that doesn't get resolved, then it's done civilly as well as criminally. There's 2 arrests, as I said earlier, that have recently been made. Only when there's a contest, someone's alleging or claiming it's not blight, it's not a violation, or there's a hardship, then it would resort or fall back to a hearing. But to the best of my knowledge, there's never been a hearing.
Okay, because I was thinking about the same thing too, Chris, like how, like being on, a lot of committees and how it works, there's a lot of discussion. I almost, like I was toggling back and forth, but because there's this escalating process to a person, I almost feel like it's better to have one deciding factor. And maybe that's why it was
That's
said,
right,
yeah,
Well, there's another reason.
a definitive, so it's not like this, it doesn't turn into like this debate, like we've already gone through the steps almost, and this is like the definitive yes or no.
If I maybe heard, per my email after last month's meeting, I think an easy solution to that is to simply say that, keep the I'm not suggesting you guys, I'm just giving you a suggestion, what I think you should consider, is we simply state the statute, which already has, which the town specifically adopts, the town manager shall appoint with the approval, so it actually requires approval of the town council. A Blight hearing officer, I can change that to officer or officers. Now, what that means is, what you're doing is essentially kicking the can down the street, and I understand that, but the flip side of that is, if the need arises, Alex names a hearing officer, the town council still requires approval. So let's say he says Bob Smith should serve, and the town council says, well, at whatever council is sitting at that time, well, I think we should have 2 or 3 or 30. Then the town council can go back to Alex and address that issue at that time. So the statute already permits multiple people, but we could incorporate that language into the ordinance by simply saying a person or persons.
So can I just offer a perspective as well? If we're talking about 1 or 3 people, we're talking about an appointment. We're talking about somebody typically in the community in some capacity. One other suggestion we could do is keep it at 1 person and make it outside of the town and make it, for example, a law firm where we choose, there's a every 2 years we contract. I mean, we're not talking about many of these a year, right? We're probably talking, you count them on one hand. So, we could say that, practice ABC in Cheshire or in Middletown or wherever it is, we can have an attorney could review this legal language and make a determination on any such hearing that may come up. and not be tied to the town, not be tied to any particular person or complaint, we could probably adapt the language there so that there's no pressure from somebody who lives in Southington to feel concerned about making a decision one way or another.
I like
And you're
that.
probably talking about what? It might cost us a couple $1,000 a year or something like that.
There hasn't been a hearing in
Right.
years, 5
So-
years or more.
Yeah, I would say the second reason for this was, you know, the idea we have 100 or so people already who serve in one form or another on various committees and things, which is rather a lot for a town our size, number one. So having a law firm do that would take that problem away. Because you're worried about, can you get 3 people? You know, because all of a sudden you've got, and it's always the same people, you know, that you're sort of and getting to do it. So I would suggest, I like the idea of the law firm. I really do.
Chris?
Just to clarify something Lou said, this is not a committee established, it's only established if needed, so it's not,
Well,
It's
there's someone
named
named,
in
but
advance.
oh, there is somebody,
Yeah.
an ad
oh,
hoc.
For 2
okay,
years.
they just don't meet until.
No,
that's
it's a 2-year
correct.
term.
Yes. So
Okay.
it'd be a 2-year term, named, but it would be ad hoc.
That's the way I understood it, but then the way you just described it, I thought, well, maybe they don't actually get named
I
unless there's an appeal.
apologize. No, I
Okay.
meant in January, I think it calls for January appointment, if I'm not mistaken. So in January, when the appointments are made,
Yeah,
that individual or individuals would be named. And then if the need arises, there would be a hearing. If no need arises, then they would just serve on a 2-year term. In 2 years, another individual or individuals would be named.
I kind of like, Paul, the suggestion to have someone from outside of town, it removes some bias.
Yeah, maybe
You
we
know,
can
and-
ask the town attorney, maybe in here we change it to the town attorney and the town manager identify and council approves the external legal counsel firm that we're gonna do, you know? And it's, maybe it's gotta be one person there, it's gotta be one attorney
Maybe a
instead of a
CEO
pool.
from another town.
That's what I would suggest, just me reaching out to a surrounding community, and asking them to send somebody,
We'll lend ours to that.
CEO.
Go back and forth.
somebody in a planning department, professional, an objective professional.
Yeah.
They can't live in the town and they don't serve in the town, right?
And as I pointed out off topic, if you look at page 1 under definition, blight hearing officer, it does include individuals. Means an individual, parentheses, S, appointed by the town manager with approval by the town council. So I think
There's
the chairman
flexibility.
did anticipate there being more than one. We can tweak with Alex's input or instruction to make it a non-resident, unbiased. Let's not pin ourselves, if I may be so bold to give opinion, to a law firm. Maybe we can find an entity or an individual outside of town, and not, I don't think it would, I know it's not a lot, they
It would
don't
be a
have
Z-
budget for that.
So we pick a CEO in another town, you talk, and obviously we would pay whatever fee if they had to work overtime or whatever, and vice versa, right? If we, okay, how's that sound?
I think that's good. So the next part is to also eliminate some of these other concerns. Do we need to include in here the term limits? Shall be appointed for terms not to exceed 2 years. Because I don't see that in the Connecticut general statute either, so my point is, so we get this neutral person that's to Plainville,
Yeah.
and now 2 years are up, now what?
I think it's good, to be honest with you, Chris. I think there's plenty to choose from, right? I think there's going to be a lot of cooperative towns because towns help each other out all the time.
All right.
I do think though, if
We all
we're
know
not,
it's like finding people to volunteer for things, that's why I'm.
on the other hand, if you're unhappy with the person that you've appointed for 2 years,
But don't we appoint them?
that's what I'm saying. But at least you're saying no term at all.
I'm saying the language that we're proposing ties our hands, so we cannot. Now, we could get someone that's doing a fantastic job, let's say there's one appeal that happens.
Okay.
And now we're handcuffing ourselves, they can't do this again. You know what I mean? And again, if we're already removing it and getting someone outside of town, I don't see anything in the Connecticut general statutes, which
No.
is what's referenced here,
That requires a
forces
term
us to
limit.
do that.
Okay, so if we remove the term limit, would that allow us to also change somebody midstream once they're appointed? I guess we'd have to specify in there that the council at the
I'm
the
not
term.
suggesting eliminating them mid-term. I'm saying you could reappoint them for a second term if the council decides they're doing a good job.
What exactly? I'm not sure.
I'm
You're sounding like you're saying something different.
It
No,
says
I'm-
it shall be appointed for terms not to exceed 2 years. So Chris is
I'm
saying is
suggesting
you
eliminate
can't
that.
reappoint them if I understand you correctly.
Why couldn't we?
It's
No, the
fine.
term. No, it's basically the term is 2 years.
We could reappoint.
It's a
the same
term
person.
not to
Oh,
exceed.
it's not
You can be
saying,
reappointed,
You can
yeah,
be
for 2 years, yeah.
reappointed.
But
Okay.
2 years gives you a chance to reappoint,
I was interpreting this as they can only serve for 2 years.
not to exceed 2 years.
Correct,
So
Lou?
what can we put in there?
It doesn't say you can't be reappointed, no.
Okay.
Appointed for terms not to exceed 2 years. 2 years is the longest.
Shall be appointed for terms not to exceed 2 years, yeah. I think it's okay.
If we have someone that we like or someone that's doing a
Yeah,
good job, we'll just reappoint that
Okay.
person.
Yeah,
All right.
okay.
Any other changes?
We got 12 to 10. I don't think these are that substantial, right?
No, I don't
think we can
need
go
that.
forward.
I don't
with
think we need. Does anyone think we need to have another public hearing?
So why don't you summarize what we have for changes, Lou?
So we're going to change the grass from 12 inches to
Hey, listen, 2
10
inches.
inches.
The whole ball game.
Okay.
We're going to rework the language for the blight hearing officer, and that'll be under both the definitions as well as section, page 4, bottom paragraph. And we are going to change the language from not more than one inoperative to one or more.
Inoperative unregistered motor vehicles.
That's correct.
Yep,
That it?
I think that's it.
So I'll work with the town manager on language for a hearing officer. We have now no interested party, no employee. I think we're gonna use an out-of-town,
ZEO?
Leave it open so it makes it easy to find a person.
Like another town manager or another
Leave what open?
Let's just leave it open as is, and then if you don't like who I propose,
Librarian.
say no.
Plainville's librarian.
Stop it. Are you proposing a change to the ordinance?
No.
Okay.
I would
Okay,
say that's-
so we have the recommendations as outlined by the town attorney. Does anybody want to make a motion on that?
It's federal though. Federal. It's federal.
I thought we were gonna table it and he's gonna make the changes, then we're gonna approve it. Or do you wanna just?
I think do we need to wait until the next meeting? I mean, they're pretty small.
I'm comfortable with Attorney Martascio, you vote to approve the stipulations that.
With aforementioned.
They're small.
Corrections, yeah.
I'll make that motion that we approve it with the aforementioned changes, though minor. And they'll finalize it administratively.
and if I may just add, I can't add your motion.
No, of course.
But I did notice that the word council is not capitalized in here, so that would be another.
Oh, never
change.
mind.
I realize
Throw the
it's
whole
a
thing out.
non-existent change, but I want to point out that I'm just making a change, the capital C. and-
Okay, and any spelling errors or grammatical errors or.
Okay.
Yeah, right. Get your whiteout out.
Do we have a second on the motion?
Second.
All right. I would like to just, since it's an ordinance, I would like to just take the time to just rehash exactly the stipulations here.
4 times.
We have, no, I'm not. I want to make sure we get this loose. I'm sorry. So grammatical changes, the spelling of council is fine. Grass is moving from 12 inches to 10 inches. The one person that will be the ZEO hearing officer will be at the recommendation of the town manager to the town council, a zoning enforcement officer of a different community who doesn't.
You don't want
They're the same.
to, you don't want to hamstring us. It's a professional from.
I think you said keep it the way it is with the as I understand the conversation, the informal understanding, you're going to use someone out of town.
But I'm just, the reason that ZEO is good is because they know the regulations, right?
They know their regulations, not our regulations.
But they should be able to look at our regulations. I mean, I do have a little bit of a problem. I mean, I do think we should have somebody who can, I mean, Alex, no disrespect, but I mean, if you're going to pick somebody who has, you might suggest somebody from another town who has no experience in blight, no experience in zoning, no experience in all, I do have a little bit of concern that it's just wide open that anybody in the world could do it. I'd much rather put this in place and have a professional who knows zoning enforcement. And if you have a problem finding somebody, then we'll update the ordinance at that time.
What if we change it to zoning member from a different town? Staff member, zoning staff member, because most zoning staff members know our blight laws and,
Yes.
you know what I
Planning and
mean?
zoning.
Planning and zoning, which includes, Yeah, I mean,
Or what if it's just relevant professional background experience?
I only say this because they're both retired now, so I can say it, but when Mark showed up, we leaned on Plainville a lot. I remember the Plainville town manager would sit on interviews for us, and Mark would do the same thing for them, so we leaned on each other. So if the town manager from Plainville was asked to do this, I think they could, but, I guess I see both sides of it.
So
What do you guys want to
language
do?
you want.
What do you guys want to do?
Planning and zoning department staff members? Does every a town have a zoning enforcement officer on their planning and zoning?
There's 250 towns. I think we can find 60 now. I think 160 sounds. Yeah.
But that counts like.
right. Come on, guys.
How about to Jen's point, if we put in their language, it says relevant zoning experiences from another town. It
Relevant
doesn't
zoning
limit-
experiences,
It doesn't limit it to that particular person, but it does open it up.
but does not live in Southington.
They gotta have a 10-inch
Right.
ruler.
All right. Come on, Mike.
Relevant zoning experience.
So please, you have a motion. Let's review now. So it's relevant ZEO zoning planning experience from another town that doesn't live here. We're changing the grass from 12 to 10. Lou, what else?
In the vehicle, it's gonna be one or more versus more than one.
Okay. And we've got the spelling change in the capital council, CN council. Your motion carries for that. It's good.
Okay, sure. Yeah, and the second was Tony.
Tony, is your second good with that?
Yep.
Okay. Further discussion.
I just have one quick thing. I know I joked a lot, but I'm serious about this, and I appreciate the folks coming up here tonight. Unfortunately, I liken this to what we talked about earlier. People that have blight on their property, people where the wood is falling off their house, or grass is tall, they know it's coming. They know it's coming. So, and I'm glad that we're doing this now to put some teeth into it, because we've been pretty soft in the past. We give people chance after chance after chance after chance, and they mow the lawn, and then 2 months later, it's 18 inches high again. So I think you guys, the whole ordinance committee, including Val, did a great job putting some teeth in there. Now we just have to reinforce it. So we need to let our staff know that the days of giving people 20 chances is over. It's not fair to folks that came up tonight that have to look at campers and mattresses and trailers. I mean, come on, have some self-respect for your property. That's my
Okay.
take.
Anybody else? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll, please.
Morelli,
Yes, to what Mike said.
Morrison,
Yes.
Palmieri,
Yes.
Perry,
Yes.
Clack,
Yes.
Del Santo,
Yes.
Dietrich,
Yes.
Chaplinsky.
Yes, motion passes with stipulations 8-0. Item C, action on report of Board of Finance, which includes the $80,200 van for the calendar house.
Motion to approve is presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Please.
So I would just ask the town manager just to make sure that, I know you don't need a CDL to drive that vehicle. I would just make sure that there's no endorsements that are required as well.
There's not.
Okay, perfect.
It's not delivery of the passenger. It's literally just a minivan. That's slightly modified.
Perfect, thank you.
Just one thing.
Yeah, please, Tony.
Yeah, I'd just like to commend the Board of Finance for the fiscal state of the town. Obviously, we had the audit report. It was another wonderful audit report once again. And it just shows how well this town treats its finances and how well we operate fiscally.
Thank you, Tony. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes 8-0 on a voice vote. Item D, action on proposed agreement between the town of Southington and local 1303-26 of Council 4 AFSCMEAFL-CIO.
Motion to approve is presented by the town manager.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the contract for the Public Works. Any discussion?
I just want to say, Mr. Chair, I appreciate the Public Works Division. Times are tough, and they realize that, so I appreciate them working with the town. Hopefully we can swing for the fences on the next one. Hopefully our, finances will be in better health. But I do appreciate them kind of taking the bullet for this time around. Good on them.
Yeah, I'd also like to say that, inflation is running about, what's it, 2.2, 2.3 right now. They've had a little bit above that in each of those 3 years, but like town manager said, they have that will be made up by certain improvement things that they're going to do. So it's fair for them, fair for the town.
Any further discussion? Okay, thank you to the town manager. This is obviously a reflection of the great rapport that he's developing with his new leadership team and the departments that are under him, that there's a willingness to work to bring tax savings to the town, while also, negotiating and getting a little bit of something in return. So thanks to all who are involved. And why don't we call the roll, Madam Clerk, please?
Morelli,
Yes.
Morrison,
Yes.
Palmieri,
Yes.
Perry,
Yes.
Clock,
Yes.
Del Santo,
Yes.
Dietrich,
Yes.
Chaplinsky.
Yes, motion passes unanimously 8-0. Item E, action on generator servicing servicing recommendation.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Morelli,
Yes.
Morrison,
Yes.
Palmieri,
Yes.
Perry,
Yes.
Clock,
Yes.
Del Santo,
Yes.
Dietrich,
Yes.
Chaplinsky.
Yes, motion passes 8-0. Item F, action on Town of Plainville Crescent Lake easement.
Motion to approve, Mr. Chair.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Morelli,
Yes.
Morrison,
Yes.
Palmieri,
Yes.
Perry,
Yes.
Clock,
Yes.
Del Santo,
Yes.
Dietrich,
Yes.
Chaplinsky.
Yes, motion passes 8-0. Item number 9, new business. Introduction and discussion of proposed town council resolution regarding Connecticut House Bill 5002.
Mr. Chair,
Yes. Mr. Nelson.
we were going to have a meeting on Friday to discuss this, but it kind of fell apart because there was a technical error. So over the weekend, we worked together to come up with some information to get to the governor to ensure that this bill would be vetoed, because I think it would have a dramatic effect. We all thought it would have a dramatic effect on the way Southington zones its properties. So, do you want me to read the resolution?
Sure.
Okay. I'm going to read the resolution that we prepared, and we're asking the whole entire council to sign it if they choose to.
And I think the original resolution, since the bill has been vetoed,
That's right.
the resolution has been adopted.
Well, absolutely was vetoed
Yep.
because we sent a letter to let them know. Southington wasn't happy. Whereas the town of Southington supports responsible housing growth that reflects local planning, infrastructure capacity, and community character. And whereas House Bill 5002 imposed one-size-fits-all zoning mandates that override local control and threaten the viability of Connecticut's towns and downtowns, including eliminating municipal authority to require parking for apartment buildings under 24 units, and allows up to 9 townhouses by right in commercially zoned lots, mandates realistic opportunity zoning for fair share quotas, causes municipalities to lose funding for noncompliance on mandated transit-oriented zoning, lowers petition thresholds, removes the municipality and public's voice by lowering protest thresholds, reducing zone change thresholds and allowing as-of-right developments without public hearings or the ability to raise environmental and safety concerns. And whereas HB 5002 unfairly exposed towns to financial liability by permitting courts to require municipalities to pay a developer legal fees in 830G appeals. Now therefore be it resolved that the Southington Town Council offers our sincere thanks to Governor Ned Lamont for for protecting local decision-making and the integrity of our communities by vetoing House Bill 5002, and further request Governor Lamont to veto future similar bills containing the same or similar language, and urging the legislative majority to work collaboratively with minority representation so our communities' voices are heard, while allowing municipalities like Southington to continue to plan for the housing needs of our communities on our own. And adopted, if so, today, which is June 23rd, 2025.
Okay, so thank you for introducing that. Do we have any motion on the resolution? Actually, that's a
Well,
discussion. We can get to the motion at the next action item, right? Any discussion on that one? Chris?
I have discussion, and it's kind of related. It just, some concerns about this whole process that I really feel it's important to discuss as a whole council.
Sure.
I can hand this to the town attorney. I know he has a copy. This is from the town charter, section 310. It talks about powers of the town council. With that, just a couple things that concern me. First of all, I appreciate the partnership we have with the Southington Chamber of Commerce. As a member of the council, I know Jack, and Val's not here tonight, but it's concerning when a mailer goes out from the Chamber of Commerce, and I appreciate the Chamber doing their part to spread a message for us. But with a line, this message is shared in partnership as a public service for the Southington Town Council. I have no idea, no authorization from this town council to have the Chamber of Commerce spread information with that language on there. And again, I appreciate the fact that they're trying to help us. And Paul, I didn't even know that we were talking about a special meeting, which was supposed to be on Friday, until Wednesday. This went out Tuesday, June 17th at 1:18 p.m. So that's concerning.
Chris, did you bring that to the, I mean, that's not really, did you talk to the chamber about that? Because I don't think anybody here even knew that happened.
So no one in the town council, that's what I'm asking. So it says this message is shared in partnership as a public service for the Southington Town Council.
Nobody that I know of was in contact
So
with
no
it.
one in the town council?
100%.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, if that's the case, maybe the town manager should reach out to the chamber in regards to this.
Well, I mean, I hope we agree that's problematic. I appreciate the chamber trying to spread messages.
I have not seen the chamber comment, Chris. I mean, the chamber's, whatever it is you said they sent, I haven't seen it, never knew about it, never nothing. So if there's something that there's a complaint about the Chamber of Commerce, it probably belongs with the Chamber of Commerce.
How is it disseminated? Was it a...
Yeah.
It's an email to all chamber members, and it says, contact the governor, sign the petition. And then it says, the message is shared in partnership from the Southington Town Council.
And
so if none of you, then I think we need to be clear that no one outside of this body has the authority to use the town council saying that
With
we're
the chamber?
endorsing or approving. No one outside of this body, I believe, should be making statements that the Southington Town Council is pushing a message. I think we can agree to that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think a lot of people have, there was a petition going around. I'm sure a lot of people shared the petition that was going around to request a veto, but besides that, I don't think, to the best of my knowledge, there was no communication with the chamber?
None.
None?
None from my office.
Same from here.
Then again, I think there needs to be communication that people cannot be saying that the Southington Town, they're doing something on behalf of the town council, unless the town council agrees, okay?
They didn't say on behalf of the town council, right? They said that they did something with partners.
For the Southington Town Council.
Yeah.
I can give this to you, I mean,
Yeah,
it's
please,
in the
send it
chamber.
down.
It's in the chamber. It printed funny, I can email it to you. That'd
Sure.
be easier.
And what they shared was exactly what was posted on your social media page as well.
Okay, so they might have taken my social media page and forwarded it.
I can give you this, because you can see enough of it there, this is the end of the.
Send the whole thing down.
Okay, so it's pretty obvious where they got it from. Okay, get it.
Tony, I don't get it. So why don't you enlighten me with what your point was just now? Because I'm trying
So
to make.
let's
a
not
valid
argue
point.
about it on here, but it's fair.
They took something on social media and said...
I highly doubt that the chamber just recklessly just starts grabbing things that council members are just posting on social media.
Well, the alternative is that someone on this town council said that to them. And we just
So,
said
yeah,
no.
Jack,
Regardless, Tony.
what are you suggesting? What are you suggesting?
that you're not being honest. I'll call a dog a dog.
Okay, Jack, you're out of order. That's out of order. You have no, do you have any evidence that me or anybody on this council has done anything regarding that? Do you have any evidence? Jack,
Yes.
do you have evidence that somebody did something on this council with regards to the Chamber of Commerce's message? Do you have any evidence of that?
Based on what was posted on social media. So again, social media could be interpreted whichever way you want.
Jack, I suggest you tread lightly with your accusations.
Again, whatever.
Unless you have evidence, Jack, I suggest you tread lightly.
I am not
Chris.
concerned about
I'd
this.
like to continue, please.
Thank you.
So, again, I'm just trying to protect the group, the body. My other concern, and honestly, Paul, you talked about some of this earlier, or we as a group talked about some of this earlier. So I think I'd like the town attorney to just simply review. Another thing that was posted is on the town council letterhead on behalf of the Republican caucus of the Southington Town Council. So again, to me, the charter clearly states that the town council as a whole is the governing body, not an individual or a sub-caucus of the town council. Our authority is collective, not individual, so all powers, rights, and duties are vested in the council collectively, not in any individual or caucus alone. The chair or the majority caucus cannot make decisions or take actions on behalf of, and I appreciate that it was identified, but it still was from the town council letterhead representing the majority of the council. 6 members are the majority of the council.
Okay.
The legislative authority of the town is exclusively held by the council, reinforcing that no single member or members, including the chair, may independently exercise legislative or administrative power. And nowhere in the charter is anyone given executive or administrative power outside the scope of presiding over council meetings or executing duties as authorized by a vote with the council. If we have a review of this, I think it may help us moving forward to ensure that we're following the spirit of the charter when it comes to the organization of the council.
Thank
That's
you,
my
Chris.
point.
Chris, and I think the letter that was written by myself explicitly stated that the letter was on behalf of
The Republican caucus.
the caucus, and it also said that the council as a whole would take this topic up today in today's meeting. Is that correct?
Paul.
No, I'm just asking you, just really quickly.
Yes,
It said that, right?
but
Okay.
it also
Is this, so help me understand what's the letterhead that you're talking about? Is this the letterhead that you're talking about?
The town council letterhead.
Is this the letterhead?
Well, I can't see it from there. It's the town
He-
council.
He's posting the letters that I do.
I see the letters
Yeah.
that, yeah.
So let's talk about that.
So-
So on 5/27 of 25, my letter was concerns with selective enforcement, and it was addressed to the town manager. Town manager reports to council.
Yep.
That was in my official capacity. 3/21/25, concerns with town's representation, addressed to the town manager again. 12/31/24, statement from myself on transparency and governance with the fire commissioning meetings. 12/27, and that was after an issue in our community that was directly related to our community. 12/27/24, special meeting request to you, Paul, which you ignored to this date, and that was public safety. 3/2/22, to the town council and the town manager, it was a request for the Ukrainian flag. 11/23/21, the statement on municipal appointments from me, because of the way that the appointments were handled. So all those were all town related in regards to that. And I got the letterhead from the previous town manager, and he told me that long as it's in the town's body, meaning anything that we have control over. We do not have control over the governor. We don't have control over House bills, Senate bills. We have control over our potholes and which roads are being neglected, but we don't have any control.
Is that
over
in the
this.
charter, Jack?
Yes, sir, that's our local powers.
It's in the, so your letterhead where it
That
has
was within my
all of our,
official
where it has
local-
all of our names, Jack, on it, is the same letterhead I used, correct?
Local.
I think it is.
Yeah, local.
We'll pass your documents in. The one that you wrote about the executive session matter, where you disclosed mediation in an email that you published in public.
You mean the letter that you posted on social media?
Yeah, after you made it public. It was FOIA-able, remember? So let's
Well, executive session of mediation, I never mentioned anything that we talk about in executive session.
I think
We
you've-
talked about mediation here.
I think there was no mediation, Jack, that was ever discussed in public until you violated and until you publicly made it known. So with that, I think
So no filings were done, and it was not to any public knowledge. So there's no court filings or any of that.
that's correct. A mediation, Jack, is not.
I still
Jack,
disagree.
Let me explain. A mediation is not a public record.
So-
it is not. It is not in the courts. You were.
Point of order.
Thank- Chris,
My
so
point
what's the point?
Then if what you're saying, Paul, is you have concerns too, then I think my request stands. I'd like the town attorney to review the authority of the town council, including, but not limited to, the use of the town letterhead. That's fine. But I do think there's a difference between a member writing about an issue that's local versus the majority of the town council sending a letter to the governor about legislation.
Fair, Chris. Thanks. I think I would respectfully disagree with you, but your comment is noted.
It also depends what the letter says, of course.
Okay, so let's move on to item B, action on proposed town council resolution regarding Connecticut House Bill 5002. Does anybody want to take any action?
I'd like to pass a motion for us, the town council, to sign this resolution and send to the governor.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Chris?
So first and foremost, we just got this tonight. It was sitting in front of us. Obviously, it was changed because today the governor vetoed the bill, and I appreciate that it's thanking the governor. A statement in here that I have extreme concern about is requesting Governor Lamont to veto future similar bills. We don't even know what future legislation is, and we're sending something asking the governor to veto something that we don't even know. I've said this before. I think that we are elected to handle local issues, and we have 5 representatives for Hartford for the town of Southington, a senator and 4 representatives. If we have concerns moving forward, especially about future similar bills, I'd suggest we invite our legislators to a future council meeting and have a dialogue with them and have them share that voice. They are our voice back to Hartford. That is, I think, an appropriate way than just putting forward something that we don't even know about. And again, we just got this tonight right in front of us when we walked in the door.
So,
Thank you. Tony?
yeah, so 3 things. Yeah, we all got this, obviously, today. And we can all read. And we can all read it pretty quickly. And we can all understand exactly what it says. Because we've seen the legislation, we've seen the bills, and it just kind of rolls them all up. Now, in terms of what you said, the language is very plain English. It's asked the governor to veto future similar bills containing the same or similar language. It's pretty obvious what we're saying, which is the second paragraph, something like that comes in, we would urge you to veto it. And the final point is this is a local issue. It's one of the biggest local issues that we've faced in the last 10 years or so. If this passed, okay, our town would become totally different, and for the reasons that we've gone over and over again. So if you want to talk about a local issue, here it is, right in front of you. Let's sign it, and also, let's congratulate the governor for doing what was right for the state of Connecticut. It's a bipartisan thing. It's, some of the legislators were Democrats who voted for it, some were Republicans who voted against it. But if you look at the municipalities that have all prepared stuff and sent it to the governor, then you'll see how bipartisan it is. And I think we should be bipartisan on it too, because we represent Southington.
Thank you, Tony. Bill?
Yeah, I just want to get into the substance of it. One thing I wanted to highlight, I don't think anybody up here isn't saying that we have a housing crisis to some extent across our country, state, town. But, there's certain things in here which you just make you scratch your head, like, unless you're pro-developer, which I don't know anyone up here who might be. The biggest problem is that when it comes to paying attorney's fees for anything, we have the American system. Each party bears their own attorney's fees. So if you want to sue somebody, you don't, unless a statute authorizes it or a contract authorizes it, you got to pay your own attorney's fees. So what they did here is that a town like Southington, if we lose on an 830G site plan submission for not properly articulating the reasons, we're going to owe attorney's fees. And that had not happened before. And those attorney's fees, if it's an appeal, it's going to be substantial. So we might owe $250,000 in attorney's fees, okay? And as if that wasn't bad enough, the other side doesn't have the same pain. So if you have a developer come in from out of town bringing a site plan or an 830G, which doesn't have a good faith basis because you know you can't get wetlands approval or something like that, but you're bringing it in a bad faith to leverage a town into approving something, and the town prevails, guess what? We don't get our attorney's fees paid. So it's just little stuff like this. There's a lot in this bill, and I'm happy the governor vetoed it for that basis alone. And I do think to say that it doesn't impact us, it absolutely impacts us. It's going to impact our tax dollars, our neighborhoods, everything like that.
Thank you, Bill. Anybody else? Jen?
Yeah, just agree with everything that was said by Bill, because I can't think of a way this isn't a local issue. As a prior planning and zoning commissioner for 10 plus years, as someone who helped plan the 10 years of the future or the past 10 years, and someone who's working on a committee to try to accomplish a vision of our community members in the next 10 years, this is detrimental. And as Tony said, it is directly targeted. It's as if towns like Southington had a direct target on our back. For us to not say something would be wrong.
Thank you, Jen. Anybody else?
Two things. I think my thunder has been stolen with regards to this being a local issue. It's a local issue. I've been accused last couple of meetings of why I'm bringing up state stuff, why I'm bringing up federal stuff, because there's a trickle-down thing here. I don't think the state of Connecticut cares anything about Southington. I really don't. And we're losing money. Taxpayers are losing money. This is 1,000,000% a local issue, and I do want to applaud the governor, and I have it on decent authority. It's an assumption, actually, that when he got our letter, that's what made him to veto the bill.
Oh, I heard that
sure
too.
that's what did.
I heard that
Yeah.
too, Mike.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah.
Jack?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, I saw the original resolution. I had a family wedding to attend on Friday, so I was not able to participate, and then found out that there was obviously issues. When that got brought up, that original resolution, I started doing my due diligence, and I think like a lot of bills at the state level, there's good and bad in anything, and you got to try to weigh which way to go. We had some of our state delegation vote yes, and we had some vote no, both from even Democrats. So certain elected officials at the state level thought that there was more good than bad, and then some thought there was more bad than good. And obviously the governor, has the ultimate authority with the veto, but I just, again, how do you sit there and decipher and weigh out everything? We don't have staff members, looking at these bills, deciphering it, looking at statistics. We're here dealing with local issues, and we struggle with some of those even, with what we have. So I just feel that, if we're going to do a resolution, Mr. Chair, I saw some of your comments on social media in regards to that you're all for, affordable housing. There's mentioned tonight that there's a housing crisis by Mr. Dzik, and not just, to Southington. Maybe we do a resolution that we, want our local P&Z to, tackle certain issues that are here locally that we have authority over. I don't think there's a better message than saying, hey, we notice there's an issue, and here it is. It's currently still in the locals' hands now that it's been vetoed, but how about we send a resolution to another local elected body that we all know and say, hey, we encourage this. Can you figure out this? I think that would be more effective than sending a letter and then now all of a sudden trying to change it to a thank you to Governor Lamont, and then it only mentions a couple of the negatives, and there's more negatives, but it also doesn't mention any of the positive things that, you know, may affect us. So I just don't think it's weighted properly.
Thank you, Jack. Jen?
Just one comment that I think would help Jack. The town has an affordable housing plan that was adopted a few years ago. So if you haven't reviewed that, it does tackle some of these issues.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else?
Again, I appreciate thanking the Governor Lamont. I think the parts of this are great. I have concerns about some of the bottom part. We really, I don't see what the urgency is. The session has ended right now. So I'd make a motion to table.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, motion to table and a second by Jack. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, sounds like the nays, the opposition outweighs the
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move
motion.
my motion.
Okay, we already have a motion and a second from Tony.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, again, I just don't think there's enough in here, and based on how you guys changed it, you know, again, I can't make a educate, and you guys aren't willing to table it, you're not willing to come to some sort of compromise on what this letter is. We saw it tonight at literally 6:59 when we walked in here. I can't vote on this. I can't take a position either way on this.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Morelli,
Yes.
Morrison,
Yes.
Palmieri,
I'm going to abstain for the reasons I mentioned earlier.
Perry,
Abstaining.
Clock,
Yes.
Del Santo,
Yes.
Dietzick,
Yes.
Chaplinsky.
Yes, the motion passes 6-2. Jim, can we get your approval to sign this and initial it
Yes.
in your absence?
Yes, you can sign for me, Paul.
Okay, sounds good.
Can we get Ms. DiPaolo to sign it too? Could we get hold of her, ask her to sign it?
I don't know if we can.
I don't know where she is.
She's not at the meeting, so I'm not sure if
Okay,
she can
yeah,
sign
fine.
it.
Motion to adjourn.
All right, fine.
Hold on,
No,
wait, we got
there's
tax refunds, Mike.
Tax refund.
Sorry, Jack. Go ahead.
We have a motion, okay, so we have item C, tax refunds.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve the tax refunds that are presented in our packets.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
7-1.
Motion passes unanimously. Looking for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.